Season 4 wastes absolutely no time reminding you that this is no longer The Witcher as you knew it. The moment the story kicks in, something feels off. It's like returning to your hometown after years away, only to find half the buildings replaced with gift shops and the other half painted purple. You recognize the world, but it's not the same world. And the show doesn't want to acknowledge that. What it wants, more than anything, is to convince you that this is the natural evolution, the logical continuation. The problem? Almost nothing about it feels natural or logical. And the first sign of that is how aggressively the story shifts its attention toward Yennefer. Now, don't get it twisted. Yennefer has always been a crucial part of the Witcher universe. She's powerful, complicated, manipulative, vulnerable, terrifying, and magnetic all at once. But in Season 4, she becomes something new, the gravitational center of the entire show. Everything starts orbiting around her. Entire plot threads bend themselves to her presence. Characters seem to exist so she can react to them. Conflicts rise just so she can posture her way through them. It's the Yennefer cinematic universe, and every other character has been demoted to a guest star. Even Geralt. Yes, Geralt of Rivia, the title character, feels like he's been politely escorted off his own stage. Geralt appears, sure, and he swings a sword here and there, and occasionally grunts something meaningful, but the energy is different. He feels distant from the narrative, like the writers are gently pushing him toward the corner of the room while Yennefer stands proudly under the spotlight. And Ciri? Her arc, arguably the central arc of the entire franchise, feels more like a background noise the show acknowledges only when absolutely necessary. Every time she appears, you can sense how rushed, fragmented, and uncertain her story has become. The girl destined to change the world has been turned into someone checking in occasionally, like a teenager texting their parents to say they're still alive. And that's where the season's different kind of disaster really begins. Because instead of simply mishandling the plot, Season 4 starts reshaping the entire identity of the series. It tries so hard to become a bigger, grander, more dramatic fantasy epic that it loses the grounded, gritty, monster-hunting soul that made the original seasons, even with their flaws, feel uniquely alive. The continent doesn't feel dangerous anymore. It feels theatrical. Characters don't feel complex, they feel exaggerated. Conflicts don't feel earned. They feel assembled in a writer's room where someone said, "Just make it emotional, the audience won't notice." But you do notice. You notice how every decision seems designed to create drama instead of meaning. You notice how Yennefer's emotional dilemmas overshadow the war, the politics, the prophecy, basically the entire backbone of the Witcher universe. And while the season keeps promising that everything will tie together eventually, you can sense the tension behind the scenes, the uncertainty, the desperation, the loud attempt to make the show feel important even as its core starts slipping through its fingers. Yet, somehow, you keep watching. Because even as the narrative unravels, there's something undeniably captivating about watching a show try this hard to reinvent itself. It's like witnessing a train's slow-motion derailment. Terrifying, confusing, and strangely mesmerizing. You want answers. You want clarity. You want to understand why the writers thought this was the right direction. And deep down, you hope there's still something worth saving buried somewhere under all the noise. Season 4 may be a mess, but it's a compelling mess. A bold mess. A disaster that demands your attention simply because it refuses to be boring. And that chaotic, unstable energy is exactly what sets the stage for everything that comes next. If Season 4 has a single defining tragedy, it isn't the broken lore, the scattered pacing, or even the sudden shift in narrative focus. It's what the show quietly does to Geralt of Rivia, the White Wolf, the Butcher of Blaviken, the man whose choices shape kingdoms and destinies, now feels like a shadow drifting through scenes that no longer belong to him. You watch him appear, say a line or two, fight a monster or a soldier or whatever the plot throws at him, and then he fades back into the darkness like a wandering NPC. It's unsettling. It's hollow. It's the kind of absence that feels louder than a scream. And the worst part? The show thinks it's doing him justice. Every time Geralt steps on screen, you can tell the writers are trying to create gravitas. Long stares, slow camera movements, emotional silences. But all of it feels empty because the story around him isn't actually about him anymore. He's reacting to events instead of shaping them. He's being pulled by the tides instead of steering the ship. The Witcher who once carved his own path now feels like he's reading someone else's script. And every fan can feel it. But the real sting comes from what's missing: purpose. Geralt's entire identity revolves around Ciri, protecting her, guiding her, shaping her destiny while refusing to control it. Their bond is the foundation of the entire saga. Yet in Season 4, that bond feels distant, thin, and strangely optional. Instead of a father desperately fighting to reunite with his daughter, Geralt moves through the world like someone checking items off a to-do list. There's no emotional urgency, no sense of dread or longing, just a vague obligation the story reminds him of whenever it needs to fill time. The fire that once defined him has dimmed into something barely recognizable. Meanwhile, Yennefer's storyline swells like a tidal wave, flooding every corner of the season until Geralt is almost washed out of the narrative. For every emotional scene she gets, he gets a wandering subplot. For every major decision she makes, he's handed a small errand. The dynamic that once balanced the show now tilts so heavily in her favor that Geralt feels like he's standing on a broken seesaw. It's not that he's irrelevant, it's that the show treats him like a supporting character in a story that should have been his. And this disconnect creates a tension you can feel in every scene he appears in. You watch him fight, but the stakes don't land. You watch him struggle, but the struggle feels disconnected from the world. You watch him interact with allies, but those interactions lack the weight they once carried. It's like the show is trying to convince you that Geralt's journey is still meaningful, but the writing keeps doing the opposite. There's a gap between the intention and the execution, and Geralt is the one who falls through it. The most haunting part of this section is the slow realization that Geralt isn't just being sidelined, he's being reshaped. Rewritten into a quieter, softer, more passive version of himself. A version that still looks like Geralt, still fights like Geralt, but doesn't move like Geralt. The man who once walked into chaos with purpose now wanders through chaos without direction. The Witcher who once changed the world now feels like he's slipping out of it. And the show hopes you won't notice. But you do. You feel it in every empty pause, every quiet scene, every moment where he should rage or resist or push back, but instead drifts along. This isn't the Geralt fans fought to defend. It's a muted echo, a ghost carrying the shape of a legend but none of the fire that made him one. And as Season 4 continues to twist itself into a new identity, you can't help wondering if the show even remembers the story it was supposed to tell, or the man who was supposed to lead it. If Geralt is the ghost drifting through his own story, then Ciri is the storm the show keeps insisting is coming, but never actually arrives. Season 4 treats her like a prophecy on pause, a ticking bomb the writers placed on the table and then forgot to set. She's supposed to be the heart of the saga, the chosen child whose power can either reshape the continent or burn it to ash. Instead, she's pushed into a maze of fragmented scenes, rushed emotional beats, and half-developed subplots that feel like someone tried to recreate her story from memory after skimming a summary 5 minutes before writing. From the very beginning of the season, you can sense the show doesn't quite know what to do with her. Ciri is present, she's running, she's surviving, she's fighting, yet none of it feels like it's building toward anything solid. Her journey, which should be the spine of the narrative, becomes a scattered collage of moments that never fully connect. Every time Ciri appears, there's that familiar spark, the unpredictability, the raw potential, the growing danger inside her. But the spark keeps flickering because the show refuses to let it burn into something meaningful. She's in motion, but not progression. She's changing, but not evolving. It's the illusion of development without the weight of development. And the tragedy is that this was supposed to be her season. The season where her transformation deepened, where her alliances shifted, where the prophecy's shadow grew darker and heavier. Instead, she feels like she's stuck in a holding pattern, circling the same emotional space while everything around her pretends to be moving forward. The writers seem terrified of letting her story grow too powerful too quickly, so they keep grounding her in side plots that don't challenge her, don't break her, don't shape her. The destiny that once pulled her like a gravitational force now hangs around her like background decoration. Worse, the political landscape that should orbit around her fate feels disconnected from her entirely. In earlier seasons, every faction, mages, kingdoms, assassins, monsters, moved with purpose because Ciri's existence altered the balance of the world. This time, those factions move, argue, and scheme, but their actions feel strangely distant from her journey. It's like she's trapped in her own storyline bubble, while the rest of the world pretends to care without actually engaging with the consequences of her existence. The urgency that once drove the entire narrative has been drained into something shallow and strangely quiet. But the most painful shift lies in her emotional arc. Ciri's greatest strength has always been that she isn't just a chosen one, she's a terrified, stubborn, reckless, hopeful girl fighting to survive the destiny she never asked for. Season 4 touches on that, briefly, almost reluctantly, but quickly moves on as if afraid to dive too deep. The trauma she carries, the guilt, the confusion, the hunger for belonging. They're still there, but they're handled like footnotes rather than foundations. Instead of exploring her internal conflicts, the show pushes her through external obstacles that never truly test who she is. And because of that, every moment of growth feels unearned, rushed, or incomplete. Then there's the emotional distance between Ciri and the people who define her story. Geralt barely crosses her path. Yennefer only acknowledges her in passing. Their bond, which should be the emotional heartbeat of the entire season, is almost non-existent. And that lack of connection strips Ciri's journey of its purpose. Because without the family she built, without the people who shaped her identity, her path feels less like destiny and more like wandering. She isn't running toward anything anymore. She's just running. And that's where the season's different kind of disaster deepens. Because the story doesn't crumble spectacularly. It erodes quietly. It loses focus, loses urgency, loses the emotional threads that once held its world together. Ciri deserved a season that strengthened her arc, challenged her, broke her, rebuilt her, and pushed her toward her role as the center of the Witcher universe. Instead, she's treated like a narrative side quest, a destiny waiting for the show to remember it exists. A storm forming off-screen while the writers chase thunder they never actually deliver. Here's where Season 4 becomes its own special kind of headache, the kind that starts as a tiny pulse in your temple and slowly evolves into a full-blown migraine the more you try to make sense of what's happening. Because on the surface, the show looks like it's finally trying to fix its past mistakes. The world feels bigger. The stakes feel higher. There are new threats, darker tones, and louder warnings of war, prophecy, and destiny colliding. It should work. It could work. But it doesn't. Because every time the season takes one step toward greatness, it immediately trips over its own feet and faceplants into the mud. The lore, already bruised from the previous seasons, gets stretched even thinner here. Not shattered, but bent in so many directions that it stops resembling the spine of a coherent story. You can tell the writers wanted to build complexity, more factions, more conflicts, more magical mysteries bubbling beneath the surface. But instead of deepening the world, the season splinters it. Too many threads, too many characters, too many motivations that never quite sync up. It's like watching a puzzle being assembled with pieces from 3 different boxes. You recognize some shapes, but they don't fit the picture on the front. And the pacing only makes the chaos louder. The show races through major developments like it's late for an appointment, hammering out dramatic moments without giving the audience time to absorb them. Entire political decisions are delivered in a single breath. Characters shift loyalties with the emotional weight of flipping a light switch. New antagonists appear out of nowhere, bringing with them backstories the show expects you to understand instantly. Every scene feels like it's trying to outrun the consequences of the last one, and in that rush, the narrative starts losing the rhythm it desperately needs. Then, in the middle of that chaos, Season 4 randomly stumbles into brilliance. It introduces ideas that actually feel bold. It shows glimpses of the darker, grittier Witcher universe fans crave. It leans into threats that genuinely feel terrifying. And when the season slows down, just for a moment, it captures something real, something raw, something that hints at the incredible story it could have been. But instead of embracing those moments, the show panics and sprints back to whatever dramatic twist it thinks will keep the audience awake. Magic, a central pillar of The Witcher's world, suffers the most from this inconsistency. One scene will treat it like a mysterious force governed by rules and consequences. The next will use it like a convenient shortcut to get a character from point A to point B. It's not used to build tension, it's used to patch holes. And the more the show leans on it, the cheaper it feels. The continent used to be a dangerous place because every victory came with a cost. But in Season 4, triumph and tragedy feel equally weightless. The emotional stakes dissolve into smoke the moment you try to hold on to them. And then there's the tone, constantly shifting like it can't decide what kind of show it wants to be. One minute, it's dark and brutal, dripping with dread and consequences. The next minute, it swings into melodrama, with characters delivering declarations that feel more like stage performances than real emotion. Then, randomly, the show tries to be humorous, but the timing is so off that the jokes land with the grace of a dropped anvil. It isn't tonal balance, it's tonal whiplash. But the most telling flaw is this: the story keeps trying to convince you that everything is intentional. Every twist, every lore change, every dramatic buildup is presented like a master plan you'll eventually understand, but you never actually get that clarity. The season is a series of almosts, almost coherent, almost emotional, almost powerful, almost great. Season 4 constantly reaches for depth, but its hands never fully close around it. And that's where the different kind of disaster becomes clearest. The show isn't failing because it's lazy. It's failing because it's trying too hard in all the wrong directions. It's a spectacle of effort without understanding. Ambition without foundation. Noise without meaning. A storm that looks terrifying from afar, but dissolves into mist the moment you step inside it. And as you watch the lore twist, the stakes wobble, and the world lose its shape, the question becomes unavoidable. How long can a story keep running from its own identity before it collapses completely? By the time Season 4 reaches its final stretch, you start to realize something strange. This isn't the kind of disaster that explodes in your face. It's the kind that creeps up slowly, tightening around the story until you suddenly understand why everything feels so off. It's not loud, it's not messy, it's not even the kind of failure you can laugh at. It's a disaster made of missed opportunities, misplaced priorities, and a narrative that keeps sprinting away from the very things that once made it great. Season 4 isn't broken in the way you expect, it's broken in the way a cracked mirror is broken. It still reflects something, but the image is twisted, warped, and sometimes unrecognizable. And yet, the strangest part is that the season refuses to completely collapse. Instead, it clings to one thread that keeps the entire thing from crumbling into dust: the villains. More specifically, the rising darkness swallowing the continent. Season 4's antagonists' motives and looming threats feel sharper, colder, and more calculating than anything the show has offered in a long time. They're unpredictable in a way that feels believable, terrifying in a way the world desperately needed. They cast a shadow over every scene, even the weak ones, giving the narrative a pulse it otherwise wouldn't have. It's almost ironic. While the heroes drift through the story, the villains are the only ones who seem to know exactly where they're going.